Gathering professions in Wrath of the Lich King, also known as mining, skinning, and herbalism, of course make good gold, but is there any place where you would have these on your main character? Let's be fair, the majority of people probably getting their professions ready now in TBC for the pre-patch or for the actual launch of Wrath of the Lich King will probably have a Druid, and that Druid will be herbalism and mining, and your aim is when you're bored and you've got nothing to do, you're just going to fly around Sholazar Basin or fly around Wintergrass just getting herbs and mines. But is this the best way to make gold? And is the loss of your second crafting profession going to make that much of a significant difference that you're almost forced to have two primary crafting professions instead of a crafting profession with a gathering profession? Let's discuss. So what you need to think about is you do get bonuses from having a gathering profession, even though they're not great, other than mining for tanks. So mining for a tank, getting 60 stamina when you're level 80, which 60 stamina is not that bad. Not when you think about as enchanting, you get 30 stamina on each ring. So actually, from enchanting and from mining, you get the same amount of stamina. The same if you was to think about blacksmithing. Early on, all you're going to have is 24 stamina gems. 24 stamina gems for those 2 extra sockets. 20 plus 20. So 48 stamina. And even when you compare it to level working gives 62 stamina, so it's not far off of that either. Unfortunately, it does only give stamina, so outside of tanks, it's fairly useless. But is it? Yeah, it is. So then skinning will give you 40 crit at level 80, which is not a lot. 40 crit isn't that much in the grand scheme of things, not when you compare it to other professions, unfortunately. And herbalism gives you lifeblood, which is a little hill. Let's say a little hill, it's a couple of thousand, it's actually quite nice, but ultimately, we're talking from a PvE perspective here and a money-making perspective. We're not really talking about PvP at all. We're more focusing on, are you going to get any benefit in PvE content, and can you make any gold? And does the gold that you can make outweigh the slight loss from having a second crafting profession? That's what I want to answer. Before we get any further, just want to say a quick thank you to all you guys who have either joined as Patreons, because there are patrons now, so thank you guys, and to everybody in the scrolling banner below who has joined the channel as a member. More on how you can support the channel at the end of the video. So there's 2 major components that I want to talk about, and that's firstly the difficulty of tier 7, which if you don't know and you haven't heard me talk about in videos before, it's going to be very, very easy. Even in a pre-nerf state, I mean, God, I don't even know if there's such a thing as a nerfed state. I mean, most tier 7 raids are already just glorified dungeons, but in a pre-nerf state, it's not going to be difficult. So, ultimately, do you need to min-max your professions early when the difficulty of the content is minimal? I would say no. I think tier 7 is actually the perfect time to combine a crafting profession with a gathering profession. While everyone else has got their druids and they're flying around Sholazar Basin in circles, competing with bots, competing with other people who are farming, trying to get mines and herbs, you'll be in other places because you're clever. You watch these videos. So let's talk about a few of the things that you probably will be doing. And don't get me wrong, positions of some of this stuff may change. But ultimately, with a little bit of gear, you don't need to be out in the world farming. So once you've got a little bit of gear, and I do mean a little bit, in tier 7 you'll be able to comfortably do this maybe after 1 or 2 knacks, maybe just in pre-raid gear. Let's be fair, it's not that difficult. But if you was to come into normal Oculus with skinning, all of these dragonkin are skinnable, and they drop Arctic fur, which Arctic fur is going to be sought after and quite expensive to begin with, I would imagine. Now, if you're some sort of tank class, this will obviously be easier. As you can see, I'm just doing it as a frost DK. I'm not even in tanking presence, nor do I have any tanking gear whatsoever. I'm literally just DPSing them down, but this is just normal. You don't need to do it on heroic. And what you've got to remember here is you've got no competition. So you can literally run around this platform, kill all the dragonkin, the elites, the non-elites, skin them all, go out, reset, go again. And this is just one example. It's literally just one example of what you can do if you've got skinning. There's tons of really good skinning areas where you can make lots and lots of gold. And let's be fair, like I've said, because tier 7, the difficulty is not going to be really there. So there's no circumstance where you're really going to need to get the absolute maximum out of your character. So if you wanted to, let's say, have engineering, or you wanted dual crafting and you wanted something to pair with it, but you didn't want mining because you've got no intention of going around mining, then skinning could be an option. You're going to get 40 crit, which is a little bonus as a DPS, which is better than nothing. But at the same time, you could run around here and make big amounts of gold. And you've got to remember, the reason I'm saying like this is on your main character, because you could be like, well, I'll just have skinning on my ult. But things like this, they do require a little bit of gear. And at the start of the expansion, you're going to want to probably go full force on your main. You're going to want to be raiding every week. You're going to want to be doing your daily heroic, your daily dungeon, like every single day. Maybe working on achievements, working on reputations, everything that you want on your main character. So actually being able to make some gold on it at the same time and not worry about having to level your ult immediately is quite a big bonus. I think a bonus that's not measurable other than by the amount of gold you make. And then when we think about mining, or even herbalism, which I'm going to show you, imagine you're a rogue or you're a feral druid, or if you're a feral tank with mining for the extra 60 stamina, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. What about stealth farming in instances? There's absolutely no competition from anyone in the outside world, and much like the skinning that we were just looking at in the Oculus, Halls of Stone has, and I'm sure will, in Classic Wrath of the Lich King, have access to mines. Now, of course, this is relevant to a rogue, but it's also relevant to any class that can kill just a few mobs on their own. But ultimately, the real key here is being a stealth class, and it's only normal, so the mobs are fairly low, so the chance of being seen is quite low also. But you get very, very easy access to Saronite mines. Like you can see, a Saronite ore here. I've not actually got mining on this character, but it would be very easy to get with absolutely no patrolling mobs whatsoever. So being a rogue and being able to just stealth through and guarantee yourself a couple of mines each run is absolutely amazing. And you're going to do each run in a minute or so, absolute maximum. I've even left intentional mistakes in here to show you that even though my health's low, my gear is fairly low as well. This character's only really done Nax, and I can still very comfortably AoE down the normal mobs just spamming fan of knives. Yes, it gets a bit touch and go, but if I was on full health, it would be absolutely no problem. But ultimately, you wouldn't pull these mobs. And the same goes for the second one. I get incredibly low, but absolutely no issues whatsoever. Whilst these spawns may not operate like this in Classic Wrath, you can guarantee that there are going to be mines in dungeons which are going to be accessible if you can stealth. And the same goes for herbs. There's numerous dungeons that drop herbs. Gundrak and Drakfaron Keep, to name a couple of them. Very accessible, don't have to kill any mobs whatsoever, just clever distracts or saps, and you can literally get every herb that you want. So it begs the question, if I go herbalism and say alchemy, or you wanted to go skinning and leatherworking, whatever, how much of a difference is it really going to make? You tell me, how much difference does 46 spell power really make in the grand scheme of things? If we're saying your BIS profession was, I don't know, let's say dual crafting, and you're going to get, around 48 spell power extra, from being dual crafting. That extra 48 spell power versus the convenience for the first phase where you don't actually need to maximize every single stat that you've got, but be able to make some gold. What do you prefer? Me personally, as a feral druid main, I'm going to be dual crafting and engineering. But going into the first phase, I'm going to be mining engineering, and I will pick up dual crafting a little while later in the expansion, probably halfway through phase 1. I definitely want the big gems for Ulduar hard modes, and I definitely want my engineering for Ulduar, of course. But to begin with, being able to make some extra gold, being able to stealth run dungeons to be able to get some mines, those sort of things are going to be far more convenient for me to begin with. And with how expensive things like the Dark Moon card Greatness is going to be, if there's a lot of outlay that you're going to have early on, you might want to recoup some of that gold. So I absolutely am an advocate of having a gathering profession on certain classes early on in Wrath of the Lich King. I think by the time Ulduar comes, where we're looking at hard modes, that's the important time to make sure that you are maximizing the amount of damage you do, the amount of healing you do, how effective you are as a tank. All of that comes into play a lot more. But actually, for tanks, having mining is not a big deal. If you're a feral tank, prot paladin, prot warrior, what are they? Blood DK. Actually, having mining for the extra 60 stamina is not a massive deal. And you'll be able to make some gold because, let's face it, as tanks, do you really want to go around grinding on mobs and stuff like that? Probably not, because it's going to be a little bit slower than if you was on a DPS. But actually being able to go through places and mine, and even places like what I just showed you in Halls of Stone, actually, as a tank, you'll probably be able to solo your way through to actually get to the mines, because they are only like 77, 78 elites, and it's only a normal dungeon. So once you've got some gear, you probably wouldn't have any problems. So just to recap, skinning gives you 40 crit at level 80, mining gives you 60 stamina at level 80, and herbalism being the worst one really when we're talking about PvE bonuses, because you just get a heal. So that's not the greatest, but actually I would say skinning and mining are the best ways to be able to make gold on your own in dungeons. Herbalism is still very good, and obviously it's going to be in quite high demand for things like making cards with inscription for people trying to get their Dark Moon card Greatness as quick as possible. So herbs and eternal lives in particular are going to be very expensive at the start. So yes, you can make loads of gold with herbalism, but I think as far as trying to meet a happy medium between getting some PvE gain and being able to make gold throughout the first phase, I've got to put mining and skinning a little bit higher, probably with skinning at the top for all DPS and mining at the top for tanks. Hopefully you enjoyed that video. Thank you to all you guys that have joined the channel as a member, and also to you guys supporting on Patreon as well. More info how you can support the channel in the outro, which we might as well roll now. And while you watch the outro, maybe click subscribe and like the video. Good idea. There's lots of ways you can support the channel to keep me here putting out World of Warcraft content and covering all future MMOs. Consider joining the channel as a member. You get access to emotes. Everyone will know you're a member when you comment on future videos because you get a nice icon next to your name. And you get access to members-only videos, which I'll be putting a lot of on the channel throughout the year. Additionally, there's a Patreon link in the description as well. Thank you for watching all the way to the end, and I'll see you on the next one.